Hey guys, I'm here with Vivian and Miss Bone from Allwell, and today we're going to be talking about Suicide Prevention Month. Just remember, if you guys ever need help or want someone to talk to, just visit room 212.
So we're here today to talk about suicide prevention.
Yes.
Do you want to get into why you started doing this job? What made you want to?
Doing mental health, yes. So at first, when I had graduated from my bachelor's from Ohio University, I was actually set to work at Children's Services.
Mm-hmm.
So I was actually working there first, and I noticed that I was making more of a connection with kiddos and doing more of a guidance counseling type thing instead of, I was still doing my caseworker job, but I was just spending more time with the kids and like helping them with their behavioral issues or whatever, their cognitive thought patterns and things like that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go venture into that world a little bit. Sat down, got my licensure for it, and I have been working with your guys' school since I think 2021. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So between the middle school and the high school, and now I'm here at the high school full time. So that's how I'm here. Yep.
Can you get into more of like the statistics on suicide every month or a year?
Yeah. So per the CDC, I did look this stuff up because it does change. And statistics for 2023 have yet to be finalized by the CDC, but it is being portrayed as the highest suicide rate since I think the 1980s, if I read that correctly. But per the CDC, in 2002, there was an estimation of 1.6 million Americans that had attempted suicide. 49,476 of them died by suicide. So if we're thinking on average, how many is that a day? That's 135 suicide deaths a day. I know that originally there was questions about, like how many in the U.S., and I was thinking, what if we thought closer to home? What if I looked at the statistics for Ohio? On average, it's 15 per 100,000 individuals a day that die by suicide. So if you think about your classrooms, how many kiddos do you have in your classrooms?
About like 20, 26.
Yeah, maybe max 30 sometimes.
Yeah.
That's half of your classroom.
That's crazy.
If you think about it, if you put it in perspective of proportions, that's half of your classroom.
Yeah.
And it's sad. I know that I was asked maybe to break it down by demographic, but I do want to say that when it comes to suicide and suicide attempts, there are rate differences, obviously, depending on demographic characteristics such as age, race, gender, ethnicity, things like that. But nonetheless, suicide does occur in all demographic groups. Surprisingly, in 2022, the highest suicide rate was among American Indians and Alaskan Natives. So that was 27 individuals per 100,000 individuals. In that demographic. So if we look at the second highest was actually non-Hispanic white Americans, so that was 18 individuals per 100,000. So much lower rates are found among Black or African Americans. That's typically 9 individuals per 100,000, still too many. And then we have Asian Pacific Islanders at 7 per 100,000 individuals. So with statistics, in 2022, suicide rates were higher among adults, which this will surprise you guys because you think it would be teens. But actually in 2022, the highest rates were among ages 25 to 34 and 75 to 84.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. So when I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure I had the statistics correct for you guys today, I was like, wow, 75 to 84-year-olds were, so when it comes down to statistics, they do matter, but at the end of the day, every demographic thinks that this is the correct way to handle whatever issues that they may be going through.
Since you've been working with mental illness and stuff, have you noticed any warning signs or anything?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest warning signs is if somebody is trying to give you their best prized possession. Say they've been writing about it, posting about it. There's signs of, obviously isolating themselves and not, participating in hobbies that they used to love, or interacting with their friends, or maybe there are quite a few warning signs, and I'm glad that you asked about that, because we talk about warning signs a lot, but we don't typically talk about risk factors. And if those that don't know what risk factors are, I will define that. Risk factors are something that increase the likelihood of something happening. So some risk factors for teenagers when it comes to suicide, or anybody really, is a family history of suicide, trauma and past experiences with abuse, violence, bullying. Bullying is the biggest one, especially in your guys' age demographic. Serious or chronic mental illness, history of substance abuse, intoxication, and actually, according to the CDC, 1 in 5 people who die by suicide are actually drunk on alcohol.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
If they have, went through a recent tragedy or loss, that's a risk factor for them. Any chronic or prolonged stress, that means like you just can't get a break. You feel like you can't get a break over and over and over and over again. And of course, access to firearms. That was the number one leading cause. Like, that was the method that was used. I think if I correctly, 55% of suicides were at the hand of a firearm.
Do you have any, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Do you have any advice, is what I'm thinking, to people out there struggling, or coping skills, or something they could use?
Yeah, absolutely. I did skip over this fact, though, and I really do want to bring attention back to it, because we are in high school and we are talking about, the severity of it. I think we forget that high school students who identify as sexual minorities within the LGBTQ community, they're 5 times more likely to attempt suicide than heterosexual students. So I think that that's important to keep in your guys' back pockets. And with the way that you treat your fellow students and your peers. Just think about the statistics that you guys asked about today. But I will say that when it comes to what do I do, what do I say, especially after going over these risk factors, I know that parents and students are going to be watching this. So some of these risk factors I do want to say can be mitigated with the help of a parent, a trusted adult. Removing firearms and prescriptions in the home, for example, can help. However, some of these risk factors must be addressed by a mental health treatment professional, especially with the things that we have discussed, right? So many parents might be thinking, okay, my teenager is moody and changing all the time. How will I know the difference between this and a mental health issue? Well, the truth is there's a fine line between normal teenage behavior and signs of a behavioral or mental health disorder. However, it's important to remember that as parents, you know your child best. You know their behaviors, their moods, their patterns. Always trust your instincts. If you sense something is off, have a conversation with your teen. Ask what's wrong. Keep an open door policy and keep communication going. And if you're concerned about any of the signs above, I highly recommend talking to a pediatrician or your mental health treatment provider for your family. I will say for students, there is something called See, Say, Do, and I will go over that for you guys because that was for, that was a parent piece. I do know that watching any child, friend, family member, anyone suffer from mental health struggles is devastating. You asked me why I was in this field, and it is very heavy, but that's why I'm here. I actually don't think I answered that. I just told you a little bit background of where I worked. But I didn't have anybody like me when I was younger. Like when I went to school, we didn't have, like, our guidance counselor didn't talk to us about mental health. They talked to us about getting prepared for college and, like, what we were doing in our classes and things like that. And I wanted to be that somebody to lean on, for somebody to talk to. I like to think that I am one of the most non-judgmental people and that you can come to me for anything, and I do have an open door policy. So room 212 if anybody is struggling
Yeah.
with any of these things. But see, say, do. So if our loved ones are struggling with depression or another illness right now, I do want you to know that suicide is inevitable. It does not mean that suicide is inevitable. It's not just going to happen.
Yep.
You know, there are steps that we can take to protect our loved ones and ensure that they get the help they need. So see, say, do. All right? So C, those symptoms that we talked about, you know, withdrawal, giving away possessions, neglect of personal hygiene, changes in sleeping and eating patterns, or talking or writing about suicide, and those acts of self-harm, if we're seeing them, what do you think we need to do next?
Say something.
Say! But how do we say that, right? Because I think that's the biggest thing is, oh, I've noticed a friend is struggling with this. What do I say? We unfortunately have to ask the serious questions, you know, and we want to ask them directly and non-judgmentally if they're thinking about suicide. So we have to ask the hard questions. Are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about dying? Are you thinking about self-injury? We're not going to get the answers unless we ask those very prompt, honest questions. You know, and some parents think that talking about suicide will plant the idea or increase the risk, but that's not true. It just creates that open door for communication. So after we say and we're asking these questions and they tell us yes, what's next?
You
Do something.
You do something.
You
about
do
it.
something, yes. So if you're concerned, we don't want to leave these people that we love alone, and especially in your guys' age demographic, and especially where you're at school. It's kind of hard to do. Like, you got to get to your classes and this and that. My advice, if you're in between classes and you did the C and you did the say, find a trusted adult that you trust, okay? One that you know that is going to take this where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Like, say, you know, extending them to resources like me, or even MBH or MVHC. Like, we have so many mental health places in Zanesville too that can help. But a trusted adult that you trust is very important when it comes to that. But I want to say to everyone, if you're struggling, it's okay to share your feelings. If you're struggling with starting a conversation and potentially in person, I actually brought like a fake message that you guys could send to a trusted contact. And it states this: "This is really hard for me to say, but I'm having painful thoughts and it might help to talk. Are you free?" I think that would be a really easy, I mean, not that it's easy, but it's very, you know, not panic inducing, but hey, I need someone to talk to.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up and we move on to another talk with Caitlin, do you have anything that you would like to say to the adults and kids out there struggling?
Yeah, so I think that while September is specifically dedicated to educating others about suicide and preventing suicide in our communities, this is not the end of our efforts, right? Suicide prevention is something we must be aware of every day of the year, not just this month or this week. Too often, suicide takes the lives of our loved ones, and too often people struggle in silence. So I think my main takeaway message here is reach out for help. Utilize that message blank that I gave you to your trusted contacts. Utilize the See, Say, Do, and I have provided the ladies with suicide crisis line numbers, and most people don't know, but Muskingum actually has a local one, and it's through All Well, so we'll have that posted too. I do want to say before I go too that if anybody is interested in partaking in prevention efforts beyond See, Say, Do, those types of things, October 6th, there is a community walk at Creek Beach Park in Columbus for the prevention of suicide. These events give people the courage to open up about their own connections to the cause and a platform to raise awareness about mental health and suicide prevention. So friends, family members, neighbors, coworkers, they all walk side by side and they support each other and in memory of those that they've lost.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
for
thank you so much
Of
for
course, yes. Thank you
coming
guys
and
for having me. And
coming by.
I'm really excited to especially get the exposure out there that you guys do have these resources at your school.
Yep.
So thank you.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And now we're here with Caitlin, and we're going to be asking her what September means to her.
So what does this month mean to you?
It means a lot to me with everything in my past that happened, so it's just kind of sensitive.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. How has this topic changed you or affected you in any way?
It affected me a lot mentally,
Mhm.
and a lot of my close family, especially my mom.
Mhm.
And ever since then, nothing's been right.
Yeah. If you could say anything to the viewers watching right now, what would you say to them? What advice would you give?
If you are feeling anything or having any thoughts, go to Miss Bone.
Yeah.
Personally, that's what I do. Or if she's not available, I go down to Miss Jackson or Miss Hyena to talk.
Mhm.
And sometimes, I know not everybody's parents, but I'll pull my mom to the side and tell her that I need to talk to her.
Yeah.
And that actually helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to the people struggling right now?
Just keep your head up. Things are going to get hard.
Yeah.
And it's
Definitely. We're in
going
high
to take a
school.
while,
Literally.
right?
Yeah.
It's going to take a while to get better, because I know it did for me.
Mhm.
It took about 2 years, but I fought through it. That's what you got to do. Don't just push off what other people have to say. That's what I did.
Everyone should be kind because you never know what someone's going through.
Right.
And I feel like we're almost adults. Like
Right.
this shouldn't be an issue with us being in high
Especially with the
school.
bullying and
Yeah.
everything.
If you guys are also needing any extra resources, you can go to 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. 988 is the number you can call and text. Muskingum County also has a crisis hotline as well. Many of you may not know this. Allwell is being one of them. You can call 1-800-344-5818. You can also text the United Way at 211, or you can call them at 1-800-544-1601. Or also, there is a crisis hotline. You can text HELP to 741-741. And there is also a National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. And there will also be information put up about the walk for the suicide. Thank you so much for coming, and guys, always remember,
Be kind.